getting the most out of Office 365 and SharePoint apps for your business. In this presentation, we're going to take a look at Office 365 ROI and are you really using it all? And then we'll take a look at how you can use apps to extend the productivity of Office 365 and some of the problems there are with the apps model. We're going to go and show you how you can go beyond just apps into an integrated business solution model and how you can implement that integrated business solutions model to effectively extend your Office 365 into a productivity powerhouse for your organization. Many of you have bought Office 365 with great promise, and you've had some of that delivered. The promise was for a collaboration system for your organization, a central place for documents, to also do things like an intranet and sharing information and automating processes and so on. The promise of Office 365 is great and is deliverable. However, what we find is that many organizations out there who have implemented Office 365 don't get beyond the basics. They're using it for email and getting that Exchange server out of their organization. They may be using it to access Office apps such as Word and Excel and PowerPoint online. They may even be using it for some basic document storage. But that's where it really stops. And the real power of Office 365 comes in when you take a look at how you can do business process automation and an enhanced collaboration around those processes. This is really where you get the full value out of Office 365. Now, Microsoft will tell you that the way to do that is to go to the App Store and download applications or apps on the App Stores. Apps are contained components that do different types of functions and features within your organization. However, the question really is can you run your organization like you do on your cell phone with separate apps that don't share information and all have different user interfaces and so on? For most organizations, that is the case. They cannot do that. And especially if you look at the average organization needs about 50 to 80 apps to actually do that, that gets a little hard to manage. So how do we avoid apps overload in business? Well, let's first start with some definitions. You have more than apps to use within the 365 suite. With SharePoint Online, Link, and other things, there are many things that you can use of that platform. So SharePoint apps, as Microsoft defines them, are self-contained extensions that may include cloud-based logic and data. They're isolated. They have their own user interface, data structure, and processes. They're also only available from the SharePoint apps catalog, either online as the overall SharePoint store or in your apps catalog within your organization. So they are controlled. The issue is they are isolated, and to really do a business solution, you have to share information across features and functions of business applications. So the second area we'll talk about is business solutions. Now these typically are, a lot of times they're SaaS applications that are separate from your 365, or it could be built in 365 in such things as SharePoint Online. And they're separate sites that have multiple functions which use lists and libraries and data and information like that to create a full business solution. These might be put under solution areas such as an HR portal or finance or an IT help desk. And the other thing is they also include some type of navigation structure, data model. They use the common user interface that's in SharePoint and workflow structure. Now, having just these solutions is one thing, but you also need operational structure context. And so, in other words, a navigation scheme that your employees can come in and navigate to different solutions to do their job. In many cases, this is also done in SharePoint. It is your site structure, and a lot of times it's built around an intranet portal and an intranet service structure. Now, from Microsoft's view of the world, this is how they view it. Everything's about SharePoint apps, and there's some business solutions and operational structural context. And those aren't as important as the apps themselves. But in reality, business views it this way. They have to have something that their employees can go to, an operational structure that they can actually go in and navigate through, such as an intranet structure. they need to have business solutions that talk to each other. You can't have an HR function, for instance, where you have to have 6 employee databases because each of them has their own app or function. And then there's SharePoint apps, of course. So how do we kind of rationalize this whole thing? Because it is confusing. So let's take a look at it here. We have apps, and these are all kind of components, self-contained functions and features. And they may be tools, they may be specific things like time-off requests or an employee directory that are all self-contained, all written as traditional programs are. And the reason for this model is because Microsoft knew they had to go beyond the laptop. They had to get into the cell phone and the mobile area. And to do that, they saw how Apple were doing things and Google were doing things, and they said, oh, we should replicate that. That's how we can do this. The problem is, who wants to look at 50 different boxes in one place? So a second approach is to actually combine things into a business solution. So let's take an HR team portal. Okay, this is actually a SharePoint site that you build that has a specific business solution area, that being HR. And you could actually go in and add in, for instance, the different app components. There's one out there for employee directories or onboarding. There's one for org charts out there and help desk for, say, HR and HR service desk. Performance reviews, maybe time off as well. Now, these are great, and it's cool you could just kind of put those right into that HR team portal. The issue comes down to you have to actually build that portal first. So hopefully you have some people that know SharePoint and can build that team portal. Now, the other problem here, though, is these are all separate apps out here. They all have different user interfaces, schemes out here that you have to set up and follow. You cannot share common data like employee. In each one of these, you have an employee list that is replicated. It can't be shared by its design. You can't customize these because they're hard-coded programs. And you must administer 6 different apps from 6 different vendors. So the real question is, what should apps be used for? Should they be used for functions where you have to share data? Also, you need to be able to get to it in the context of it. So that HR portal might be actually in the intranet service type of structure where an employee could start at the top page and easily go to the HR portal as they need to, and then navigate around within a overall organizational context. So these are really the components out there that are available to you. Now, Microsoft chooses to really emphasize the apps area, but you really need to put apps in the context of a business solution and in the context of your organization. So what do you do with all this? Well, there is a way, and we call it an integrated business solution model. And it combines the combination of an intranet service structure in SharePoint Online with sites and subsites already built, a MyHR or solutions that are already built as well, and a combination of using, where appropriate, apps to augment the functionality across this business model. So let's take a look at this. First of all, if you were just to start with apps, here's what it would look like. But when you put it in the context of the organization inside solutions, now it makes sense where they go. And this is what we call an integrated business solution model. It's using apps in the appropriate places for the appropriate functions. Okay, and this is something that we really push at SP Marketplace as part of our solutions as well. So let's take a look at how you might do this. You can set up an intranet structure in the context of your organization by setting up, for instance, just team sites, an intranet home site, subsites, as well as subsites below that for departments. Okay, this is something that you can build and create a simple structure. However, to get to a full-featured kind of intranet service structure, there will be quite a bit of work that has to be done on this. But it is possible to build this in SharePoint. It may take time. You also need some SharePoint expertise. But this will get you that overall context and some basic solution components within this. So if we take a look at it, maybe in my organization, I might have a My Company Home, a Help Central, which is kind of a place for employees to make service requests to different departments, a Document Central, Form Central, and then maybe some specific departments in my organization. And so I take these team sites and actually update them to be able to fulfill these types of solution areas. Now, the second is you're going to have to build those solution areas. So you need to fill out each solution module. So for instance, let's take an intranet. You take the requirements, and this is kind of a standard thing. You get requirements of what you want that intranet home to be for your employees when they come in. You do a design, and then you add components. And those components would be the SharePoint site itself. There may be some core components of pages and lists and libraries and announcements and workflows. You might also add some SharePoint apps like a weather app or other things like an employee of the month type of app as well. And then you add content. So let's take a look at actual one. So you might have an employee directory component. This is actually an app available in the App Store. You could have a tabs utility. This is also an app on the App Store. Then you could insert news feeds or calendar or event type of things from the App Store that enhances the calendar function within SharePoint. You might put an employee of the month, a weather app out there, and even a polls app. So this is what we mean by actually taking and building an overall structure and then a solution site like an intranet home site, and then determining where it makes sense to put in those apps within the site. And here's an example of one that's built out. This happens to be the intranet portal from SP Marketplace that comes as an application template and already is built out in that structure, but allows you to add apps where needed. It also has apps that are already integrated into this. So this is the completed solution. So let's take a look at a more functional one, HR. So let's say you have a set of requirements. You want to keep track of employee information and hiring and onboarding and performance and time off and maybe some policy management document libraries and benefits. So these are the requirements. Again, you need to do a design, build the HR site, and then put in the components. Now here, you're going to see that we have a couple of different sites. We've got an HR staff view of the site and a My HR, which is a portal side of the site that limits the employee to seeing only their filtered information that they need to see. There's some SharePoint core components that we've decided to use instead of, say, just apps. So for instance, employees. Employees is a set of data we're going to have to share across many different areas. So we want to be able to look at an employee and see all their time off, their documents, what reviews they've had, even certifications, and so on. So it's a shared data source. Okay, so we're going to put that in SharePoint, not in an app. Also, applicants we're going to capture as well, because we're going to want to share that data as well and do some workflows against them. We're going to have libraries for employee documents and policies and reviews. And then we're going to actually add also some SharePoint apps, such as an onboarding app, which automates task creation for different departments when onboarding an employee. A time off app, which keeps track of employee time off requests. An org chart app, so you can actually have it read, for instance, that employee list and create an org chart or the user profiles. And an employee directory. So these are all self-contained apps. Some of them, if they're built right, like onboarding, actually share and create SharePoint task lists and so on. And finally, you add the content. That's the actual data about the employees, documents, and so on. So now you have an HR solution. And this was built from a combination of a solution site, a set of SharePoint components, lists, libraries, and so on, and apps brought in from the App Store that made sense for that. And this is the resulting HR business solution. So the integrated model does have some challenges, okay, and we've seen these at SP Marketplace. So first of all, you do need to build the overall structure and solution sites. This is not necessarily simple. You can build a number of team sites and have a simple structure, but you do need to have some business analyst knowledge for processes and how things should fit together. There is some best practices around building an intranet service structure type of SharePoint skills and experience is required, not super skills. You can have power user skills and maybe just beyond that. And you need to understand the SharePoint limitations. So, but it is an excellent platform to build the organizational context and the integrated solution model on. Now, the other thing that's a challenge is you got to watch it with the apps. It depends on how the apps were designed, but a lot of SharePoint apps on the App Store were not designed to integrate into an overall solution. They have no common design guidelines for look and feel, data architecture, or any type of integration, ADKs or that type of thing. They're typically isolated apps with no integration with other apps or solutions. Now, we've built a number of them on the App Store that do integrate very well. They create SharePoint lists, they create different workflows and so on, so that you can actually do a combination of the app and leveraging SharePoint. And others are also doing that. And at present, the apps models requires developers to build the integration. This is presented by Microsoft. They tell you that. So you have to use REST and JSON and know all about those. A lot of times they're hard-coded and not flexible. So that's one of the things that we've been dealing with as a solution provider for small to medium businesses. So let's take a look at how you can actually put in your own integrated solution model. First of all, we at SP Marketplace provide a SP Business Suite. This is a pre-built set of application templates on top of SharePoint, which allows you to pick and choose components to build your solution model. And this gives you the organizational context and individual solution modules to start with. Now, some of these already have integrated apps into them, and we also have third-party partners that are part of our business solutions integration model. So we also have gone in and tested and created a partnership where we can take that solution model that we have in the overall context, and we have different partners that can integrate into it, such as an LMS that integrates with it and sends messages to our HR for certification knowledge, updating certifications of employees, which is important for any regulated industry. Chorus, we use their document generation and automation in both our HR and our CRM for proposals or for new employee documents. And so on across the board. We have integrated certain types of apps in the App Store with our overall business solution model. And what this does is it allows you to, out of the box, not have to hire programmers to do all this integration. And if you're like most SMBs, you don't have programmers sitting around waiting to do that, or you don't have the money to pay consultants to do all this. So with the SP Marketplace business solution model, we have not only the overall context structure, but also are embracing the app model where it makes sense in bringing it into an overall business solution. So what we've done is something we call IBCM, Integrated Business Context Model, and we've done some development guidelines that we are giving our partners for how to build the app within the Microsoft model, but also build it in such a way that it can also have loose integration and tight integration with other business solutions and business components. We've defined that in building an app, it really is not isolated. It may be isolated from an architectural standpoint, but it needs to be proactive. It needs to be able to put out alerts when things happen, such as a class is completed by an employee that needs a certification to tell HR that certification is done. It needs to be integrated. It needs to be able to fit into the right site in the right modules. And you can have loose integration, just pushing records into an app web that allows the client to add a SharePoint list, or tight integration, put them into a list in a host web and allows the clients to use alerts and workflows and so on. And it needs to be predictable with I/O. So these are some of the things that we are putting in place with what we call our integrated solution model that we are working with app partners as well as our own apps to provide you a better way to take your Office 365 to the next level with business solutions. Learn more about SP Business Suite and some of the apps that are integrated with this solution at spmarketplace.com.